Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. I'm PJ Trudeau. Thank you so much for joining us today for innovative strategies for employee engagement. Certainly an area where we always have a lot of challenges, and certainly an area where I think there are always new things we're looking to see what we can do to really help engage our staff. And just keep people engaged as we move forward with all the different things that we're trying to do on a day-to-day basis. So we're very happy today to have with us Alex Suckman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Barometer XP, whose mission is to create cultures where people are excited about their work because they feel a strong sense of purpose and belonging. She uses games and play to strengthen interpersonal dynamics such as trust, accountability, and psychological safety in the workplace. She was a finalist for the Metro DC ATD Award for Excellence in Innovative Learning, has been featured in Forbes, and is a sought-after speaker and thought leader on using play as a tool for organizational effectiveness and employee success. Alex, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Um, and thank you all for being here. And I'll just give a heads up now. This is going to be a very interactive session. We're going to do a couple of different activities. So to the extent that you're comfortable being um, having your camera on and muting yourself, that'll make it more fun and hopefully you will get a lot more out of it. But if you would rather observe, that's totally fine. We're very much invite in to play. It's never mandatory. Sure. So I want to start with a story that illustrates the importance of employee engagement and just what's possible. There's so much out there about disengagement and quiet quitting and all of the new terminology for when employees are actively tuned out. And that is absolutely a problem. But I think a big part of the problem also is employees that are showing up and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going through the tasks, but they're not putting more initiative into it. They're not looking to grow. They're not feeling motivated and excited to find better ways to do their work or new opportunities for collaboration. And there's a huge loss there too. When you think about developing people and what's going to keep people motivated to stay in a role, and what's really going to help their teams and the whole company thrive. So this was a team that I worked with in the spring of this year, and they were a digital marketing company based in Texas, but they have employees all over the world. It's about 12 to 15 people on their team. And everybody performed well. They're really great at recruiting and hiring talent. But the owner felt like even though people were doing all the work that was assigned, when they hit a snag, when there was something they didn't know, or they had to do something new, or there was some problem, they were always coming to her. And she felt like she wanted them to feel more comfortable trying to solve things themselves, and then coming to her when they had, if they'd already tried and they needed help. So we did a game session. It was right after they'd had a little bit of turnover. We did an hour and a half virtual session. And the purpose was really just, if she wants more collaboration and more initiative, let's see what happens if we focus on building stronger relationships between colleagues and helping them see how each other think, understand each other's roles a little bit better, and have this moment for laughing and getting to know each other. And that's exactly what we did, and people loved it. Several of the team members are based in the Philippines, and English is not their first language. And so we were very cognizant about picking games that did not have they weren't like word play games or something, so that it was more accessible to everybody. And at first, the non-native English speakers were a little bit shy, but by 20 minutes into it, everybody was laughing. Everybody was having so much fun. They were learning just fun facts about each other. And it was great. And it ended, it seemed really successful. About 6 months later, the owner called me. I was like, I have to tell you what's been happening. Because everybody had so much fun working together, they started looking for more opportunities to collaborate just because they wanted a chance to talk to each other. They wanted to spend time together. And so they started going to each other when they hit snags in their work, when problems came up, when questions came up. And not only that, they started coming up with new ideas. We could do this process quicker if we made this change, or I think this is a way we could add to our current offerings that our clients would really like. And after about 6 months, the owner said she got 5 to 7 hours back every single week in time that she wasn't answering questions or sort of hand holding through problem solving. And not only that, she was getting all of these new ideas that were really helping the company. And so this is a team that they were already sort of normal level engaged, and she really wanted them to go above and beyond. And by building those relationships and creating that space where people felt comfortable sharing new ideas and trying things and building off of each other, created that. So I think that's such a great illustration of what happens when you have engaged people and how it benefits both the employees and it also benefits the bottom line for the company. So now I'll share my screen and move forward. So obviously you're all here, so you know that engagement is important. That's not something I need to sell to you. But some of the reasons for it, there's there's really hard data out there that when you have happier employees, they're going to be physically and mentally healthier and they're going to be more motivated. When they are happier and have higher morale, they're going to perform better. They're going to be resilient in the face of challenges. They will know that the company and that their leaders have their backs. And so it's worth putting in the extra effort because your contributions are valued and appreciated. And you're also going to stay longer. You might recruit other people to come work for the company. There's such a long tail of positive ripple effects that come from investing in engagement. And it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple stuff. It's just looking at what are some of the barriers to having happy and engaged and motivated employees. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a couple of the statistics about employees who do feel a sense of community, who do feel that connection, not only to their people, but to the work that they're doing. 58% more likely to thrive in their roles, 55% more engaged, and 66% more likely to stay. These are pretty impressive numbers. So our agenda for today is to explore 3 of the root causes that contribute um, to lower engagement or total disengagement. One is not having a strong sense of community and belonging, not having that psychological safety to have ideas, to know that people aren't going to laugh at you, to know that ideas are going to be welcome, to feel like you have some social relationships, some social accountability to the people that you work with, because then you're more motivated to go out of your way and help them and vice versa. The second one is, but often what triggers employees to start tuning out a little bit in the first place is that the way expectations about their roles and responsibilities are not communicated in a way that makes clear sense to them. It makes sense to the manager. But if they're not getting the information that they need in the way that they need it, it's really hard to act on that. And that can cause this vicious loop that I'm sure we've all witnessed or been part of at some point, where you do the work that you think you're supposed to do, and your manager says that's not right. And you're like, okay, well, can you tell me what you want? And like, no, you should just know what I want. So go try again, and you try again, and the same thing happens. And then everybody is really unhappy. So how do you look at those communication differences to make sure you're not losing people through miscommunication? And then the third is building that sense of shared accountability. So people recognize that if they don't pull their weight, it's not just hurting them, it's actually hurting the whole team, and wanting that, almost having that positive peer pressure at work. Any questions so far? And please feel free to jump in, unmute yourself, or pop a question in the chat anytime. I want to have this very discussion based and not just me talking. So don't be shy. As PJ mentioned, I'm Alex. I'm co-founder of this company called Barometer XP that brings play into the workplace for all different types of learning and development. And I know that play has a pretty bad rap when it comes to workplace. Everybody has had some sort of very awkward, the word forced fun comes up a lot. And my partners and I have spent a lot of time researching why play does goes wrong and how do you make it go well. And this is one of the frameworks that we have, just giving this to you a little bit of background and context before I move into the activities. There's three different levels of depth in outcomes that you can get from when you play at work. And understanding what depth you want is crucial to picking the right game and setting it up in the way and letting people know what's expected of them. Because when you're asking people to do any type of activity at work that's outside of their normal job description, it's really vulnerable. It's scary. At work, you're literally paid for your performance and you get performance reviews and people are watching what you do and you want to do a good job. You don't want to do a bad job and make people mad. And so asking people to do something that they haven't done is uncomfortable and that feels really vulnerable. And people don't know, even if it's let's all go to a happy hour and do a trivia night. Are you being evaluated in some way? Are you supposed to schmooze with leadership? Are they looking for, who's trying to build those connections? Can you just hang out with your friends and not participate in the game? If you don't know an answer, is that going to look bad? There's a lot more going on than if you were going to a trivia night with friends. So in thinking about what are the different levels of depth and how do you want people to engage, the difference between these three tiers, so you have bonding, and that's strengthening the relationship. The story I shared at the beginning was an example of team bonding, of what happens if you just invest in building better relationship, more empathy and understanding and social capital between colleagues. And so this is going to be probably less competitive unless it's a particularly competitive team, and more getting to know each other, laughing. I never say fun is never the goal, but you do want fun to be like a side effect of this. You do want the experience to be fun. The second level down is when you're adding a level of reflection about individual behavior. How did I show up during this game and why? And how did my colleagues show up and why? So let's say we're playing charades and I think it's so fun. I'm, creative. I come from an arts background, and this is great. And I'm just going to pick on a name that I see here. Let's say Javier is like, this is my nightmare. Like, do not make me stand up and look silly in front of people. I don't like this at all. Well, that's a really important thing to understand about each other. And, it might be that, Javier is shy and isn't comfortable with public speaking. I don't know any of this about you, Javier. I'm just your face is right there, and I'm picking on you. But maybe it's the fact that it's not public speaking or being in public that's keeping him from really enjoying it. It's the fact that there's not time to prepare. And it's like, oh, wow. So now I know if I want to get the best out of Javier, I need to make sure he has time to prepare before I ask him to speak or to do something public facing. And you've unlocked some of these hidden characteristics and preferences and tendencies that we all have. And the more you know about them, about yourself and other people, the more you can set up your collaboration to be successful. So building the team building level of play is wanting to know more about individual people so that you can leverage their strengths and avoid their their pressure points or the areas where they don't feel as confident. And then team development, the deepest level of the iceberg, is with a level of reflection about how did we perform together? How could we all communicate better as a team? How could we have reached our goal faster? How could we have communicated better? And so you're looking at making change at the culture and the team level rather than individual behavior. So it's sort of helpful to think about what are the outcomes? How do you want people to think and reflect as you're playing, so that you can get the most out of it and have it be a positive experience? So I'll pause. Any thoughts, questions, reactions to this iceberg and thinking more intentionally about bringing play into the workplace?
I think they
All
were all
right.
good
Oh, yeah.
points. I think they were all really good points. And as someone who happens to be shy or introverted, yes, it is important to kind of prepare myself to go into something where I might have to be, as you said, a little bit more vulnerable or silly in front of people, especially if you're in a leadership role. I think people take cues from that. So it's always nice to kind of have a heads up.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I'm not going to go too much into this. A lot of what we do is looking at what are the mechanics and dynamics within games and what skills and scenarios do they simulate in the workplace. But um, a lot of it is looking at how do you set up a space to practice things that people are uncomfortable with and want to get better. And when you practice in this very low stakes environment and you continue to practice with the people that you work together most closely with, um, that's such a benefit. You're building that muscle memory, you're building that support for each other. You're recognizing that maybe you're not the only one who has this skill set. So there's someone that you can share some of the share some of the work with, or have backup, or get some ideas or support, and that makes a huge difference. You think about when you're a kid, everything you learn, you practice, so it's through homework or music lessons or sports practice, anything. When you're an adult, it's like, well, watch a video or hear a lecture and change your behavior forever, and that's pretty unreasonable to ask of all of us.
Alex, there was a question from Alex in the chat saying, do you find that there's better engagement for events during office hours versus after hours?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I do. I think that they're very different, like social events after hours versus doing games during work. I think if you're looking at it as investing in learning and development, and building up employee capability and team capacity and all that, it is good to do during the workday. Those are the hours that people are most tuned in, um, and when everybody is presumably going to be there. Um, I think there is opportunity to weave some of this more reflective and methodologic approach to play into after hours social, but I do think it's best within the workday. It's a great question.
And Alex, I actually had a question regarding your thoughts based on what Javier said. Would it, how beneficial is it to ensure that you have the leadership involved and kind of showing that, hey, I'm feeling comfortable, I'm going to be vulnerable, and just modeling that behavior and having conversations with them ahead of time about participating? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's 100% critical for leadership to be on board and to be fully part of it. One thing that it's a very common mentality, no matter what role you're in, what sort of level you are, to think like, well, I do everything right. It's all of my colleagues that don't know what they're doing. Um, and that's very rarely ever actually true. Like we all, even if what we do is we do it really well and it's correct, we might not understand how other people communicate. So this is going to come up in one of the activities we do. We might not be explaining it in a way that is, you know, going to get the best response from other people. And often these these cultural issues that lead to disengagement come from the top, and it's really important for leadership to show that they're willing to be part of the process. They're going to look inside themselves and figure out what are some things that they need to work on as well, um, if they're going to expect it from other people. That's sort of a red flag for us if a company wants us to come in and work with a team and they're like, yeah, can you fix them? Like, I don't think so, because you're probably the one who needs to be fixed first. Yeah, great questions. Okay, so let's go to our first activity. And this is going to address one of the big factors of engagement is not having that sense of psychological safety, identity, and belonging, people not knowing how their colleagues are going to respond when they do show up as their authentic self. Our idea is going to be welcomed. I think of the story, I had a boss for many years who was a great boss, but and he would say to everybody in the company, I have an open door policy. Like, please come give me ideas or give me feedback at any point. Every day he walked into the office and was like, "Mm," and like trudging down, and you could hear him like, loudly opening and closing doors. And so even when his office door was open, it didn't seem approachable. Like, I don't think he realized that, but the body language, um, and his tone was not saying like, yeah, I'm welcoming your ideas, like let's figure out things that we can do differently. It was like, I'm not in the mood for this. I already have too much and too many burdens. And so little things about how people might be showing up that they don't even realize contradicts what they say that their values and the culture is can have a huge impact. So we're going to do an activity called Pickles. If you have a phone with you, I'm going to grab it and scan this QR code. It's a very simple drawing application and it's anonymous. I like this tool because even if you are a professional artist, your drawing will look like it came out of a pre-K classroom. It's a very rough tool. It's a good equalizer, and it's very different having to express yourself through a picture than through words. So this is our practice round, and then we're going to do a meteor question. I love this. Lots of stars and happy faces. And if anybody would rather have the link, I'll put the link in the chat. Um, if people would rather do this on your computer. These are fantastic. Oh, I see someone did the annotate, did like a meta picture. Very cool. Okay, so you're getting the hang of using pickles. So now we're going to go to a meteor question that is designed to get into a conversation and think about how is it different thinking about a concept and getting into a discussion that's based on an image rather than just having to think about it verbally. So the next question is, what does belonging feel or look like to you in the context of work and a team at work? And I'm just going to clear the and there's no right or wrong. You could be as abstract or as literal with this as you feel comfortable. You're just getting out an idea. What does belonging feel or look like to you? Give it about 30 more seconds, and then we'll have a conversation. Oh, I love that the hand's holding a heart. I see like a Rocky style double fist pump. So definitely keep drawing. For those of you who finished drawing, what are you thinking? What's going through your mind as you're seeing all of these pictures come up, as you're seeing people's thoughts on this question? Feel free to unmute yourself. Inclusion, happiness, yeah.
It's warm.
Warm, yeah. Representations of equality. How does seeing the pictures compare to if we were just sharing verbally? There's a difference in how you feel or your openness to discussion or to new ideas. Oh, great things in the chat here. Yeah, working together towards a real sense of safety.
It's interesting that most people chose the color green.
That is a
Like
great observation.
it's like I'm like, oh, they're nice colors, but most of them are positive, warm, you know, reds, pinks, greens. And I'm like, oh, a lot of people did green. That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious if that's intentional, if people chose green for that reason, or if it was just your favorite color, the first one you saw on the palette. Something else that I like about a tool like this, where people are expressing themselves visually, is when very often in a group, when you're having a discussion, the same people will jump in and talk first. And whether they mean to or not, it often crowds out room for other voices. But something like this, where people can respond simultaneously and at their own pace, um, it takes away that feeling that certain people might dominate, whether they intend to or not, or people who are more introverted and have so much to share, but they're just not always comfortable inserting their voice in. Um, but by getting all of this visual representation out, you can then have a conversation, be like, oh, I see somebody drew an equal sign. Like, I'd love to hear a story about that. And then it's like inviting somebody to share what they've contributed, rather than just seeing who pops in first. So I think it's also a more inclusive approach to starting a discussion. Excellent. So a couple other questions. Can you think of any conversations that you would like to have with your team, with your colleagues, that this type of tool might be useful for? Is it quiet today? It's that snowy Friday brain. Trying to get to the weekend super quickly.
I will share. I'm responding to the last question. What I like about this activity is it doesn't put a name with the picture. So being able to anonymously speak in terms of how you feel or how it makes you feel if you're doing an activity with a group of participants, for them to be able to freely share how they're feeling. I think it's great because it does create that psychological safety because you don't necessarily know who responded how and in what
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Anonymity can be really powerful.
I also see
Yeah,
it
thank
being
you.
helpful in your team meetings as well as you're talking about like anything in your team meeting. Could it be priorities? Could it be um, something that you need to get people's opinions on the team. And
Hmm.
so, and if someone doesn't feel safe, if you don't have an opinionated team like mine, some folks may be feeling like, okay, it's safe that I don't have to respond. I can just do so through pictures. If you don't have
Yeah,
a team that's open to responding, typically HR folks are open to giving their feedback, but in other contexts, it may not be that, where a manager can say, I can use this tool to get my team's feedback because I'm not going to get it in a group setting or environment.
yeah, that's such a great point. And having a visual record is really memorable. I mean, people will remember some of these pictures. You can always take a screenshot of all the drawings and like have that for a reference and share it. And so it is, it's qualitative data, but it's can be helpful data to have as a record. And also, like any type of activity that you're doing with people simultaneously, it creates a shared memory, and that becomes a shared reference point for that group. That's going to further enhance that psychological safety and feeling of togetherness.
Alex, some great comments in the chat. And Margaret asked, are there alternatives for those that can't access visuals? That we've had blind employees who can't access these tools. So curious about your recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know about this tool specifically. I have, I've worked with teams that, whether it's a government agency or corporation that doesn't allow external software programs to be used. And so we've done a sort of analog version of this where people can, we encourage to draw, but if they would rather, write a response, and then people can, go up and put them like sticky notes on a wall and look at them. So you're sort of doing an analog version of this. But I don't know about the software itself. That's a great question. I can look into that. But with every game and activity, there's so many ways to adapt it to make it more accessible or to be more accommodating or inclusive. And that's one of the things I really love about using play is there's so much opportunity to be creative and kind of go off what is it? We prescribe a drug for something that's not specifically what it's designed for. Like doing that is playing it not necessarily how it's intended, but focusing on a particular dynamic or aspect of it. Off label, yes. Thank you, Sylvia. I don't know why my brain could not think of that word. So any closing thoughts on this area of using play as a way to bridge that sense of inclusivity and belonging and psychological safety, and that being an approach to engagement?
So, Alex, some of the comments were that it was an engaging way for people to be creative during meetings. I could see this as being helpful after a project meeting or a tough conversation. And sometimes you don't have words to describe and you're more comfortable drawing it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so dependent on words. When I know for me, like I think in terms of like my thoughts are very spatially organized and more like diagrammy. And so sometimes it's really hard for me to explain something succinctly because there's like too many moving parts. But if I can make it visual, it's going to make a lot more sense. Excellent. Well, I hope you give pickles or something like this a try because it's a really great activity.
Alex, it's Sylvia.
Yes.
I just have a question. If you're doing, let's say you were to do a pickle exercise after a tough project, and
Mm-hmm.
and what you get is a lot of, unhappy faces, and I mean, what you get is that people really didn't feel good about it. Do you have recommendations on how you handle that? Because then what you have is, mostly unhappy people. Now what do you do, right? Because it's anonymous, it's hard to know how to handle it.
Yeah, I think there's such a tendency to ignore any type of emotion, like especially negative emotions in the workplace, which I think I understand the instinct, but I think it's totally wrong. If people are unhappy and many people are unhappy, that means there's an opportunity to change how you do something so it can go differently next time. And so if that happened, that would be a great way to start the conversation of, wow, a lot of people are not happy with the outcome of this or, how this conversation went or something. What could be different? What would make you feel differently? If we were to do this again, what ideas do you have? And you're in earnest asking, like you've brought the attention to this, you're acknowledging that, things didn't go perfectly, and you're inviting everybody to be part of the solution. And I think normalizing those types of conversations is so important. If part of the reason that I got into organization development is I had a totally different career before. And I kept saying, hey, every week when I go to do this type of report, it's really difficult and it's really frustrating. It would be so much easier if we did XYZ. And people were like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, but nobody did it. So finally, I was like, I'll just do it. Like everything that I think would make my job easier would probably make other people's job easier. And I'm just going to do it. Um, and as I started hearing the things that more and more people complained about, and I was like, why aren't they doing anything? Like, it's not rocket science. Like, it's not open heart surgery. It's like create a template and show people how to use that template. Or, mention that the way somebody answers your question isn't helpful to you. And so rather than write them off, say, hey, it would be much more helpful if you could answer my question with this type of information, because this is what I'm looking for. And it drove me bonkers that other people weren't doing it. And so I was like, I'm gonna make my career around like, how do you get rid of some of these friction points in the workplace that don't have to be there? And talking about it is the first step. Yeah, that's a great question. Anything else before we move on? And that's actually the perfect segue, because the next cause of disengagement that we're going to talk about is clarity complexities, making sure that people fully understand expectations and instructions and culture and norms and goals and all of those things. And this is another drawing game, but your drawings, no one will see them. It's you're drawing on paper and pen, and it's really just an exercise for you to reflect on how it works. And so this is that example I mentioned at the beginning. And I would love to see, hands or thumbs or something. If you've ever been in that situation where somebody's asking you to do a deliverable, but they don't tell you what they want, they're not clear on what they expect. And so whatever you deliver is never right, but they don't tell you what they want. I see some thumbs, I see some nods. Yeah, it's really frustrating. It is such a frustrating situation to be in. It almost feels like you're in like like a thriller movie or something where like people are messing with you. So a lot of that is we individually we communicate in the way that makes the most sense to us and don't necessarily stop to think about, is the way that we're putting the message out going to resonate with the people who need to hear it? And just being aware of what our own preferences are and what other people's preferences are. So we are going to do, this is probably my favorite game. I call it my Swiss Army knife game because there's a million variations of it. It's called Visionary. And I am going to be the visionary in this. I have a picture on my screen that you cannot see. And I am going to describe this picture to you. And you are drawing it solely based on my description. And there'll be a 2-minute timer on the screen. So I'm limited by 2 minutes. We're all limited by 2 minutes, me for describing and you for drawing. And then we're going to reflect on it. And the purpose of this is to get at that clarity and communication. It's not to draw a perfect picture. It's for you to think about what's helpful in my instructions and what would be more helpful. What information do you need? What order do you need the information in? What details did I leave out that you think are critical? Or what details did I include that you felt like were not as relevant? Because I want you to give me the feedback of how do you need to be communicated to in order to fully grasp something. Does that make sense? Any questions? I'm just going to describe the picture exactly what it is. I'm not playing tricks or anything. It's a really simple picture, but it's very hard to describe something that's very clear in one person's head to other people that have no idea what's inside your head. All right, everybody have paper and a pen? All right, here we go. So it's just a sketch drawing, black pen on a white background, and it's portrait oriented, so the tall way. And it is a close-up of an owl's head. That's all it is. The owl, it doesn't have ears or feathers or anything. So I'm going to describe the shapes and sort of go through it that way, break it down. So if you want to start by drawing a very large circle that takes up about 3/4 of the page, it's centered, it's touching the top, like this big round head of the owl. And then there's a neck, and it looks like the owl is peeking out from the left side of the page. I think this is the reverse when I do it, so just flip it. But like if I was peeking like this and there's the diagonal of my neck, so there's that diagonal line that goes down from the head to the bottom of the page. And then inside of the owl's head, it's just a very rough face. So the face is heart-shaped, but it's a heart that has a rounded bottom. So it's sort of like, I don't know if you can see, sort of like this. And it takes up almost the full width of that big round circle and almost the full height. So it's a big, rounded, heart-shaped face. And inside of that are 2 circular eyes and a beak. And the beak just looks like the letter V. It's like an upside down triangle with no top. And so you have the big heart-shaped face and 2 perfectly circle eyes and a V-shaped beak. Any questions, any details you want me to repeat? All right, I told you 2 minutes goes by really fast. So this is the owl. This is what I was describing. Every one of you would have described it in a totally different way, and you would have been equally correct. There's no one right or wrong way. But let's dig into what would have been most helpful for you. So looking at these questions, what was helpful in these instructions?
I felt like your visuals were helpful.
Like the shape descriptions.
Yeah, like when you were when you were showing the shape, because and granted, you talk about a heart, for example, that was definitely helpful. My heart, by talking about, obviously you think a heart would be more pointed at the bottom, but you said it was rounded, and then, just showing your visuals were helpful.
I found, yeah, you explained it very basic. As an artist, you first told us what we were going to draw, and I started drawing it. And then I said, wait a minute, I have to listen to instructions. And then when you said the big circle, and then I said, okay, now this is simple. One thing I was waiting for that you didn't say, or maybe I didn't hear, was you said do the 2 circles. And then I was waiting, well, do we put little dots inside? So like as the eyeballs? But no.
Yeah. That raises such an important point of, you say just as much about what you don't say. Like the fact that I didn't say it's like a solid, fill the eyes in, or there's a little dot. It like left that ambiguity of like, well, I don't want to do it wrong. If I do it this way, is it wrong? And I mean, there's so many real life examples of that where it's like, okay, and I want, the report to have this in it. Well, does that mean it shouldn't also have this? Do you want this other piece included? And for whoever is giving the instructions, it's very clear there's a lot of, associated assumptions within that, but those aren't clear to the other people.
Or as a listener, you said one thing and then my mind fixated on that, and maybe I stopped listening to the instructions. And so there's that breakdown of communication, like, oh, I already know what to do. And then, and I think that happens a lot in communication. People say, okay, you want to report? Great, I'll do it. But they don't know what's supposed to be in it. They stop listening.
Yeah, and that goes really nicely into the second question, what would have helped you feel more confident? Maybe if I paused and, it was a more open-ended conversation where people could have asked for clarification or asked for more detail during and not after. So like if we were a team and we were like, okay, how do we communicate better? That might be how we structure the initial instructions part. Is it like we're going to talk about the first piece, I'll share it and then we'll talk about it and make sure everybody's understanding, and then we'll go into this next piece. And so there's this sort of understanding that you can't get started right away. You're just in this information gathering phase for a while before you take action. And now that's a shared assumption that we all have. Yeah. What else either was helpful or would have helped you feel more confident?
I think this was really helpful and just the instructions and just describing the step by step. But I also think it can also be more helpful if they're also like you're also maybe doing it with us. That could be helpful for
Mm-hmm.
other folks too. Or maybe do like a sample first, an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. So many people learn through example or sort of learn through whether it's watching an example or doing. And if you know that about your team, it's totally going to change how I would have, how I would have explained this, how we would have set up this type of activity and how we would structure our work going forward. Yeah. Thank you, Mabel. That's a great point. And then can you think about how this kind of activity, these types of conversations might help people feel more engaged? What the link might be to getting this type of clarity in communication styles and setting new expectations for group communication and the impact that would have on engagement.
I think it's a great exercise. Like it's a nice visual showing the team how we all interpret instructions, and that like, oh, how do I listen, or what did I do, and what are our strengths? Maybe find out our strengths and weaknesses, what we're good at, and what what tool do we bring to the team? Maybe this could be sort of a visual representation of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And encouraging self-advocacy. If I know, like as Mabel said, if I know I learn best when I can watch somebody do something and sort of ask questions as I'm observing, I'm going to ask for that. Instead of just listening passively as somebody's explaining, I'm going to say, can we do an example together? Or like, can I see an example that you've done before and walk through it? Because then I know once I have that level of understanding, I can take it and run with it and I will meet your expectations. But if I'm just filling in these gaps, uh, that's not going to work out well for anyone. Yeah. Any other thoughts on visionary and what the types of conversation this might have and how it might change engagement?
I had one question about the drawing.
Yeah.
Did you choose that, or is it kind of a random one? Um, is it we make up
I
our own
have
if we do that?
Yeah, you can make up your own. I have about 20 pictures that I've saved and used for this. Some that are simpler and are just, one color and line drawings, and some that are much more complex, depending on um, depending on what the conversation you want to have. Like, this game you can use in a lot of different ways. But when I'm doing that sort of individual, let's think purely isolate what do people need to hear to feel confident and comfortable engaging in something. I like to stick with a simpler picture. So I've just Googled, simple line drawings. Excellent. So now we have one more um, aspect of engagement and an activity to play through. And that's, how do you get people excited about the idea of collaboration and interdependence? This is, a lot of people are just like, I just want to do my job and not have to deal with other people. But the truth is, for the ultimate goals and objectives of a team, a department, an organization to be fulfilled, you need that interdependence. You need that sharing of information, the different perspectives, projects that move through different teams and departments. And you need that sense of shared accountability, that if you don't do your part, it's going to mess up other people. It's not, nobody's going to be able to succeed if one person doesn't do their role and take it seriously. So we're going to do a quick activity that starts to build that sense of accountability and showcase how important each individual is in accomplishing that goal. And it is a game called Count to 20. For the sake of time, I'll just ask for a couple of volunteers. If there's maybe like 6 or 8 people who want to volunteer to play this, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And PJ, if you can spotlight those people who volunteer, but I'll explain the game first and then ask people. So we're literally counting from 1 to 20 as a group. We have to say every number between 1 and 20. Only one person can say each number. If 2 people say the same number or more than 2 people say the same number at the same time, we all start back at 1. You can't talk other than saying a number. So you can't like say, I'm going to go next, or we're going to do this order. You can't gesture about the number or gesture that like, I'm going to go next. And cheer when we get to 20. It's pretty simple. Who would like to volunteer to be part of the group? Tom, thank you. It's really fun. It's absolutely, there's no trick to it. Like it's absolutely as simple as I said. Katie, excellent. We had a couple more. Come on. Edwina, awesome. We get one more volunteer. Okay, well, I think that makes 4 of us. Oh, Sylvia, thank you. Perfect. PJ, are you able to spotlight the 5 of us?
I am absolutely working on that.
Maybe it's pinning. I can't
Yeah,
remember
I
what
think, let me see, add spotlight. Oh, I don't know if it's gonna limit me, but I will keep working on it. Yeah, it looks like it's only gonna let me spotlight you, so I'm gonna pin everybody. That's what I'm gonna have to do.
Okay, perfect. So that everyone who's playing, make sure your camera is on so we can at least look at each other. And
Alex,
any
right?
questions before we start?
And the last person was Katie?
Katie and Sylvia, yeah. Or how about if you don't want to play, turn your camera off. If you want to play, have your camera on. That'll be easier because
There
then
we
we'll
go. I
just see
think I
who
got
has their
everybody.
camera on. Okay, excellent. So if your camera's on, we're counting to 20. I'll go first. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
8. Oh,
1,
2,
3,
4.
4, 5,
6,
6,
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9,
10,
11,
12,
13,
14,
15,
16,
17,
18,
19,
20, Yay!
And
We
I
did
think
it.
that would have been easier in person.
Yeah. And there's ways to make it easier or harder. And there's again so many ways to play around with it. But really quick, very simple. Um, so we don't have too much time to reflect, but what was it like working part of a team? Like, we made some mistakes and had to start over. How did people feel? Some people might feel really anxious about that, but then when it happens, it's like, oh, no one, I don't even remember who the people were who said the same number at the same time and started over. So it's not like anybody was ostracized. Um, over time, we probably started looking at each other's facial expressions or getting a sense of pacing. Um, see how people think and how they contribute. And you can reflect on what helped us get more comfortable as a team. And there's variations to play again and to try different approaches. So really simple, but building that shared accountability, like we're all part of this together. Um, I do want to share. I have a bunch of resources. So what we do is we make it easier for other people to bring play into their work. We do engagements with teams, facilitation, and some organizational change. We train other people on how to bring play in, how to use play for different types of performance outcomes and culture outcomes. And we have a free tool that, if anyone's interested, I'll share. And it's a database of all of these different games and how to play them and what are the specific team dynamics and skills that are used within those games. So you can connect it to specific outcomes. So if you're interested in getting a link to that database to set up a free account and the PDF of these slides with the game instructions, either send me an email or just scan this QR code to share your information with me, and I'll send that to you. I'll send that to you today. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that have come to mind.
From the chat, Alex, it looks like everyone has had a fantastic time. It is amazing to think about all these different ways we can engage people when we're trying to do this on a regular basis, and to look at it from a different perspective has been fantastic. So thank you so much for really putting all of this together for us and being able to share all of these great examples of things that we can do to really help keep our staff engaged and help them to see things that they may not want to see or don't understand about themselves, and in a gentle way focus on that so that they can hopefully be able to work through and find other ways to collaborate.
Yeah, it's not an either or of like work either has to be all serious and very dry, or it can be fun but not as engaging. Like those things are all very compatible.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.